doctrines are changing, because right now people see that lots of the original classical, what they call conventional approaches, like using a lot of armored vehicles, using artillery, using tanks, are no longer working in this war, because drones are inexpensive, very extremely developed, very connected. They fly in sort of like groups, and basically you create different strategies with drones.
In Saudi Arabia, Americans on one side, Ukrainians on the other. They're sitting down at a table in Jeddah. President Trump predicted a lot of progress towards a deal in the Ukraine war. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who's there, has even suggested if the talks go well, America might reopen the supply to Ukraine of military aid and vital intelligence. Now, while neither Trump nor Rubio would put it quite like this, the talks in Jeddah then could determine whether America is willing to stop helping Russia to kill Ukrainians. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, emerged from the talks a couple of hours ago. We're getting there, he said. What did he mean by that? Will the Americans accept the terms on offer from President Zelensky? And maybe a bigger question, if not, why not? Now, in a moment, I'm going to be talking live to the former Ukrainian defense minister and leading strategist. That's Andrey Zagorodniuk. And would Zelensky concede in ceasefire talks? And what are Kyiv's red lines? What if Donald Trump's team insists on the kind of concessions Ukraine sees as a virtual capitulation to Putin? Let us catch up on some of this, all of this, with Catherine Philp, the world affairs editor at The Times. Hello to you, Catherine. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, John.
Catherine, can I just start then with Canada? I mean, Canada, there's Trump now letting Canada have it with both barrels yet again. More tariffs, threats of more of those to come, and an ultimatum to give up Canada's nationhood and become an American state. What can you say, Catherine? What do you say?
Well, John, I've been in contact with several Canadian officials over the last few days just to really grasp how this feels in Canada. I think it's taken us quite a long time in the UK to really grasp exactly how Canadians feel about this all, because it just seems so extraordinary to us. It doesn't quite seem real. But they are absolutely genuine in their belief that Canada is facing an existential threat from America. I mean, again, these are just words I never thought I would hear myself utter, and here we are.
As you say, really, truly, truly astonishing. And look, now let's move on rapidly to Saudi Arabia in Jeddah, those talks. And for all the encouraging noises, Catherine, out of Washington, it is a make or break test, isn't it, of what Ukraine is willing to offer and what America really wants to take away.
Yes, and I mean, so far it's like sort of reading the runes or reading the emojis coming out of Jeddah, because that's about all we're getting from the two sides. We've had such insights as the talks are almost complete, that they are going okay, and we got a handshake emoji from Andrey Yermak, who is President Zelensky's chief of staff, who's in the talks there. Yeah. We don't know if that means that the minerals deal is about to be done. I think that is probably the most concrete of the things that could come out of today's conversations in Jeddah. But obviously this was as much as anything an opportunity for the Americans and the Ukrainians to get that relationship back on track.
Yeah, but it could hardly get worse after that bust up in the Oval Office of the White House a week or so ago. And as you say, we'll see. I mean, shaking hands emojis, maybe that's encouraging. Who knows? One can hope. Big question. Donald Trump's readiness to remove that American bloc on arms supplies and intelligence, which has been such a gift, Catherine, to Putin.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen that in what's played out on the battlefield in the last few days, particularly in that area of Russia where Ukrainian forces invaded last year and are still present. So they've taken an absolute hammering there. I mean, I think it's significant that we saw Ukraine hit back in the way it did today in the early hours overnight, over 300 drones, mostly aimed at Russia's energy infrastructure.
Yes.
And I think that was we should probably read that as a signal from Ukraine that, one, they're still in the fight, and two, they can still do damage to Russia with its own weaponry, with homegrown weaponry, and of course, the drone is becoming the totemic weapon of this war, and that's what they chose to hit Russia with. So that's a clear message: we can still harm you even without weapons.
Yeah, and worth keeping in mind that if there is some sort of agreement on a Ukrainian ceasefire offer, well, then we'll see. What does Russia do? They've shown no sign of wanting to take up a ceasefire deal. And then, if that's where we are, the Trump administration will have to turn the pressure on Putin in a way that we simply haven't seen so far. I must ask you, last of all, Catherine, and again, thank you as always for joining us. The talks in Paris between defence chiefs from some 20 countries, they're looking at the formation and the deployment of a coalition of the willing, something to guard a ceasefire if there's a ceasefire. But Catherine, what's it worth without an American security guarantee to go with that minerals deal?
Well, that's the $64 million question. What is it worth? Is it at all feasible without that American backup? I think it's worth seeing those discussions in the context of what still needs to be done in terms of essentially a replacement European security architecture for Europe that is also weighing up that it could be abandoned along with Ukraine by its American allies. So any progress that's made towards that kind of cooperation and kind of normalizing that and making a formal structure out of it is all good. In the end, of course, it's not only the American backup that may hang over whether this happens at all. It's whether Russia permits it, because so far it's said it won't.
All right, Catherine, it's so good to talk to you. Thank you so much. I mean, talking to you is a bit like a candle in a very dark room. So hopefully we can talk again soon. Now, I want to welcome to the program and get a Ukrainian perspective from Andrey Zagorodniuk, who's a former defense minister of Ukraine and who's now on the line. Andrey, welcome to you.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. Let me ask you first of all then. So from what we understand, your country, President Zelensky, is proposing a ceasefire on air and at sea, but not on land. What would be the value of that partial ceasefire?
It's an interim solution. So we had quite a long history of ceasefires with Russia, and pretty much all the time they were never upheld. So basically our government is saying, why don't we try and offer some areas where Russia can demonstrate that they're actually happy to stop the hostilities, and that would be the air means long-range strikes. I believe that means that Ukraine is not going to strike Russia energy and Russia infrastructure. Russia is not going to strike Ukrainian infrastructure. And the same thing in the sea. Freedom of navigation, basically no hostilities. In the case if that holds, then maybe it makes sense to discuss further. But also during that time we demonstrate the readiness. They demonstrate the readiness. So basically whoever has hopes for possible solutions, here we are. There is let's give peace a chance, basically.
Right.
And I think that's not undoable. It's just a question whether Russia is actually interested in this or they're going to drag this along, and we will see that very shortly.
Right. So it would be the idea of a ceasefire in the air and at sea. It would be a test of Putin's ability and willingness to keep any deal, to observe any deal, and also keeping up pressure on the invaders as well.
That's correct. But also this is a demonstration that Ukraine is ready, because as we heard constantly from the White House, they're blaming us for not willing to accept any like a ceasefire, peace, whatever, which is painful because, if they tell us about the value of peace, it's kind of ironic, to say at least. But nevertheless, through that, we're showing that, yeah, of course we're interested. Let's start with something.
Right. Now, what about these reports? And I stress reports of America wanting us in the mix as part of the negotiations, Ukraine to, early on, right at the start, to concede sovereignty of the territory that's occupied, and maybe even with Volodymyr Zelensky's presidency in the mix too. Would they be red lines for you? Would they be deal breakers?
Zelensky said that he does not expect us to restore in like a short future
No.
the territorial integrity with the force, simply because he realized that this is impossible based on the
Yeah.
appetite of
Yes.
allies to help us with this.
But that's not the
But
same as relinquishing sovereignty, is it?
no, sir. No, no, of course not. And he's not going to. First of all, Zelensky has no right to do that. Frankly speaking, I don't think that any democratically elected leader in Europe, in any European nation, has a right to actually go and say, okay, that part of country is no longer ours. I don't think such rights exist. I don't think they're in UK or anywhere else. But nevertheless, even if theoretically he could do that, I don't think that would help, because I don't think that Russia is after that.
Yeah.
They already said that they already control it, so basically they will just pocket that and move further. So I don't think, first of all, official relinquishing will be helpful. Secondly, I don't think it's possible, and I don't think again that actually helps to install peace in a sort of long run. But
Right.
yeah. Anyway, so I think that's not going to happen.
Okay, now let me put a big question to you here. I read your paper to the Royal United Services Institute and your article for the Atlantic Council, and you make the point that if there's a ceasefire, it has to lead to Ukraine strengthening its security, not just an opportunity for Putin and Russia
Right.
to rearm. Now, that would mean, wouldn't it, your friends and allies in Europe and elsewhere would need to come together and buy with Ukraine into a mutual defence partnership. Are we then talking, in the end, about a European NATO which does not rely, as it has, on America?
These are fantastic questions. They're a little bit separate because, frankly speaking, it seems like Europe may need this anyway. Because right now, Europe cannot be absolutely certain that United States would play that role in NATO as it was supposed to play with the previous administration. Previous administration had a very rough attitude to the to any kind of a NATO security issues. So they were saying like a slogan of no inch of NATO territory,
Yes.
which is not written technically in the NATO charter,
No.
but nevertheless that's how it was treated. Clearly, Trump is not following the same path. So they're saying that, well, we'll see what we're going to do, and if NATO country is attacked, maybe we will come, maybe not.
Yes.
So that destroys a lot of the confidence, and so I guess that Europe is now coming up with the idea that they may need their own alliance.
Yes.
So that's the first. Secondly, regarding Ukraine, any ceasefire is as valuable as it's protected. Because if the ceasefire is not protected, it just can be operational pause for Russia to restart, and we have seen this over 10 years, like many times. So basically, if we build up some kind of a security assurance system, which would deny Russia ability to have a successful another strike.
Yes.
That this ceasefire is of course it's a great thing, and it's valued, and we need to cherish it and keep it, and so on and so on. So that's where we are.
Okay, yeah. You think we're heading for a European NATO anyway.
Potentially, yes.
You would not get into NATO. America wouldn't allow it, nor would Slovakia, nor would Hungary. But you think we're heading for a European NATO, and you see Ukraine's as an important part of that. And I guess it's also important to note, isn't it, that Ukraine now is and has been leading the way in developing tech solutions, low-cost, quick solutions to the defence needs of your country, and that would need to be the case across Europe.
Yes, the war is not going to be the same after this war. The war fighting concepts, everything is changing, doctrines are changing, because right now people see that lots of the original classical, what they call conventional approaches, like using a lot of armored vehicles, using artillery, using tanks, are no longer working in this war, because drones are inexpensive, very extremely developed, very connected. They fly in sort of like groups, and basically you create different strategies with drones. So drones, electronic warfare, some other types of warfare, cyber, obviously, this all changes tremendously the nature of the war. And yes, unfortunately, Ukraine has a very good knowledge about that, and of course we are sharing this with our friends, partners, allies, and helping them to become more resilient in the future of possible possible future conflicts.
All right, Andrey, thank you so much for your time. It's so interesting to talk to you, and as always, we wish you well at this very difficult time. That's Andrey Zagorodniuk, the former defense minister of Ukraine there.